Hi everybody, Jim deVarennes, Sober Living America. We're putting together a blog series on how do you quit drinking and doing drugs. It's kind of the million-dollar question. We were sitting with some folks last night and at the community and talking about this, and they were telling me the things that their parents had said to them. Things like, you know, if you loved us, you wouldn't do this. If you cared about your kids, you wouldn't be drinking and using drugs. One of my personal favorites, if you cared about your life, you wouldn't do this. And of course, these things always came after we felt totally horrible about ourselves, usually after we messed up, after we've lost a job, our wives left us, and our parents, to console us, come in and say, well, you know, if you really cared about your family, you wouldn't do this. And we always agree when they say this, but it really doesn't make us feel any better when this happens. So what do you do? How do you stop drinking and using drugs? I like drinking and doing drugs. I really did. You know, some people say, well, I used so I didn't have to feel. I don't know. I drank and I used. I kind of fell into it in high school. You know, I always felt a little bit different. Never felt like I completely fit in. So what happened to me was, you know, all of a sudden I ended up with a crowd that was smoking a lot of pot, and I was accepted in that crowd, and suddenly I had a group that I could hang with. I got introduced to this thing called freebasing cocaine. Once I got into that type of drug use, my life spiraled downhill rapidly after that. I tried a lot of things to control my drinking and drug use, as I'm sure a lot of you did. I really wanted to, you know, I didn't like thinking I was different from my fellow people who could go out and have a few drinks. And I thought, why can't I do this? So I went through these different methods of trying to control my drinking and drug use, and I just couldn't do it. It was, you know, they say in this one book that my drinking career has been characterized by vainless attempts to prove I could drink or use like other people, and I sure couldn't. And if you're like me, you've probably tried to do a lot of these things as well. You know, I finally had to come to grips that I cannot do this. I cannot drink and use like a normal person. I had a lot of pain going on in my own life, you know, I wanted to quit. I couldn't quit, and I was in a real dilemma. You know, all my family and friends wanted me to, and where it came down for me finally was, you know, I just finally reached out for help there. And who I reached out to was my older brother. He was in this 12-step program. When I called him up, I thought, oh, here it comes. I'm going to get the lectures now from Chuck. And he's going to give me, you know, the same stuff that I've heard out of mom and dad and my wife and my friends. Instead of the lectures, he asked me something that surprised me. He asked me, he said, Jim, do you want to quit? And I said, you know, I've wanted to quit for a long time, Chuck. He asked me to meet him at 8 o'clock, 12-step meeting. And to my surprise, I actually showed up. I cannot remember what they said in that meeting. I have no clue what I said. But what I do remember is they asked me to keep coming back. I was impressed by sort of the camaraderie of the whole thing. At one of these meetings, I heard this guy Clancy talk, and he talked about, he said, I have a different reaction to alcohol and drugs in the human body than normal people do. He went on to explain that when his wife drinks, and really similar to my wife, when she drinks, she has a couple drinks, and I say, hey, honey, you want another drink? And she says, no, I'm starting to feel it. And I'm like, well, that's good, right? That's why I'm drinking. She says, no, I'm getting kind of, I'll feel like I'll be out of control if I drink anymore. I don't know about you guys, but I don't get a feeling of being out of control. I get a feeling of being in control. I feel better looking. I feel like I can talk to anybody about any subject. If my wife has a couple more drinks, her body gets nauseous. Again, that does not happen to me. My body says, I'll have another. And if she does go ahead and she has those 2 or 3 more drinks, she gets sick. My body doesn't get sick. It just keeps saying, have more, have more. So as far as the body is concerned, that's what's happening with your body. You know, years ago, these folks put together a book, and they talked about that recovering from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Well, that's the state of body that they're talking about, that they have a different reaction to alcohol and drugs in the human body than others do. If I was allergic to peanut butter, obviously you'd tell me to stop, right? And it would make complete sense that I would, because I don't like the reaction I'm getting. If stopping drinking and doing drugs was the solution, then detox centers would turn out winners every time. This man Clancy went on to explain why that was. He says, Jim, what happens to you is when you don't drink, when you're not drinking and doing drugs, you tend to get restless and you get irritable and you get discontent and depressed and anxious and things like that. And when that happens, my mind tells me, oh, I know the solution to this. Have a few drinks. Do some drugs. And of course, once I put those in my body, now I get that different reaction to alcohol and drugs. I get what they call a phenomenon of craving. My body keeps saying, do more, more, more. Knowing those things, it's a huge thing to know that that's true about me. And I kind of had to come to grips with that. You know, in the fellowship, they'll call that the first step, that I admitted I was powerless. But to me, that word powerless is like, what does that word mean, powerless? Well, powerless means that I can't drink and do drugs, because when I do, I'm going to have a different reaction than the normal person. But I can't quit either, because my mind will not let me. I'm going to get restless and I'm going to get depressed, and my mind's going to immediately tell me to go do some drugs. And that is powerless. Over the past 20 years, we've run sober living facilities. And at Sober Living America, we've had 50,000 people come through our doors. And we've learned a lot. A lot of these individuals have been to treatment. They've been to the psychiatrist. And here's some things that from working with all these people that we've learned. One is, go to some 12-step meetings. You know, once you've made that decision that I really would like to try something different, go to a 12-step meeting. Try a lot of them. Not every meeting you go to is a good meeting. You're not going to always relate with everybody there, but try a lot of meetings and keep doing that for 90 days. You know, you'll hear people say go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't know about any of all that kind of stuff, but just keep trying and talk to those people. When you go to that first meeting, get some phone numbers. At the end of the meeting, or usually at the beginning of the meeting, they'll ask people, is anybody here at their very first meeting? Raise your hand. Let folks know that you're new. After the meeting, go up to that person running the meeting, go find those people who are picking up the chairs, and ask for some phone numbers, and get 2 or 3 phone numbers, and actually call them up and thank them for the phone number, and let them know that you're new, that you really have no clue what you're supposed to do, and they're going to give you some really good directions with that. The next day, go to another meeting. Stay strong. Tell yourself, I'm not going to drink or use no matter what. If you have insurance and you need treatment, by all means go. Some of us just need that break. If you don't and you feel like, you know, I can't get away, go to a county detox place. Go to the local hospital. They'll take you in and they'll help you get through those first 24, 48 hours. If you've gone to these meetings and you've gotten some phone numbers, appoint one of these people as your sponsor. It doesn't have to be the person that you feel like you have the most in common with. You're looking for help and some guidance of how to work through these steps of this program, and you're learning to gain from their experience of how they stayed clean and sober. It was told to me that if you go to 12-step meetings, that it was suggested to work the 12 steps. Genius, huh? So if you do that, so many people will go into these groups like this, and they'll say, oh, I tried this 12-step group, or I tried that 12-step group, but they never really did the things that were suggested to do. I had to learn to pray. No, this is not religion. Y'all remember the prayer, God, if you get me out of this one, I'll never do it again. My old favorite prayer. The other one was the next big lie I would tell my wife. Really, I'm never going to do it again. So pray in the morning. It's just a good way to get plugged in to whatever God you believe in, whatever power you want to do. It's not a bad habit. The next thing I would say is, even though you may have only gotten a week sober, when those new people come walking into one of these 12-step groups, and you can tell who they are, they look just as scared and just as lost as you and I did. Be willing to go up to them before or after a meeting and say hi to them. Let them know what's going on with you, and let them know what's kept you sober for the last 2 or 3 days or this last 7 days. But be willing to share with them. A friend of mine puts this, he calls it the 6 things. And here's his 6 things. Go to meetings, get a competent sponsor, and he defines a competent sponsor with a sponsor who has a sponsor and is actually working the steps. Work the 12 steps, work with others, and most of all, have some fun. It's not a boring and glum life. I know that's what I thought. If I don't drink and do drugs, where's my personality going to be? But the amazing thing is alcohol and drugs, they took away the things that a person values in their life. My wife and my children and the hobbies that I used to have, and being clean and sober, it brought those things back, and it brought such excitement and joy back in my life. For me, I ended up joining the Atlanta Whitewater Club, got into whitewater paddling. I thought bouncing a plane off a runway, you're not supposed to bounce them, but apparently I like to. And flying would be fun. So I got into that. You don't have to do these drastic, crazy things like I do. Apparently I tend to like some excitement in my life, and that's what I did. A lot of folks, I started reading again. Just being there with my family and watching my little girls play sports. Being coach dad. Recovery is a joyful thing. So, keep trying. Good luck to you, and don't give up. You'll get this thing. Don't give up.